theme for this year, I guess these several luncheons, is living in a world of change. So the one thing I think we talk about at the museum a lot is the only constant that we can guarantee at the museum and in this world is change. And so we are living in a world where we have got to, we turn on the news, and whether it's the changing weather, or whether it's disease, or whether it's global climate change, everything around us is constantly changing. And so what's really, really important today is that we create a community of leaders, of kids, of adults that understand how to manage in a world through change, right? Because every day, whether we were all just comparing what kind of phones we have and what versions we have and who actually really knows how to work them. So we live in a world where everything changes on a daily basis, and so it's really important that we, particularly with our children, create a generation of kids who have the ability to think and problem solve. And so when you hear a lot about STEM education, a lot of times you do hear about we talk about the text, and the STARS and the testing and those kinds of things, and those skills are really important, and that is what we do at the museum. But it's also really important that we're creating a generation of kids that are creative, that are thoughtful, and that can problem solve, because we really don't know what jobs are going to be available for them when they graduate from high school. I've got a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I was very thankful that on her spelling test last night, the word engineer was one of the words, which I was thrilled about. I was most proud of the fact that she knew what it was and could spell it, thankfully. Better than pioneer. So it's important that we educate our kids, because we don't know what kind of world we're going to live in. And so I'm going to talk a little bit today about what we do at the museum and how we use technology to do that. For us, technology is a really important tool because it allows us to continue to change. So it's not technology for the sake of having lots of cool stuff. We use technology to tell stories, and so I'm going to share a little bit of that with you. So as I was just saying, I think that what we do at the museum, and our mission is inspiring minds through nature and science, but what we're doing is we're trying to create a generation of change makers. So if you got Wired magazine last month, which so many of you did, you saw this little girl, and if you could read it, basically the article was about the fact that we've got to create a generation of kids, as we talked about, that can go out and change the world. So we can sit back and let change happen around us, or we can go out and change the world in good ways. And so there's so many challenges that we're facing, and we've got to create a generation of kids that are excited and enthusiastic and have the skills to go out. And so this for us is really what our mission is. We are about this little girl and creating, whether it's the next Steve Jobs or anything else, it's about creating change makers who are going to go make a difference in our community and in the world. Well, how do you do that? First of all, you have to create the will, right? So first of all, you have to, as you've seen, does everybody know who said this? Anyone? Gandhi? So you've probably heard this quote or seen it a lot of places, be the change you want to see in the world. But that's a really important quote if you stop and you think about it for a minute. When we think about it at the museum, it's really so much of what we're about. So we're not just about kids coming on a field trip, having a good time and going home. We're about them coming, getting engaged in the content, getting engaged in the world they live in, and understanding about how when they walk away, what kinds of questions can they ask, and what kind of changes can they make in their daily lives, and hopefully as they grow up, what kinds of changes will they impact the world. So one, you have to have the will to want to change. And the second is you have to have the skill. And that's what we talked a little bit about before. And I'm sure most of you are in businesses that require, I always like to ask this, does anybody in a business that requires any math? Yeah. I love when I go to rooms and people say no math. Really? Have you paid a tip today? Do you have a P&L at your business? So, one of the things that's really important is that obviously our kids are not getting trained in math and science. A new study came out yesterday. I mean, every day a study is coming out, and we are getting worse and worse and worse. We're 22nd in the world in creative thinking. We're 23rd in the world in numerical literacy. I always, please name 22 countries you would like to be behind in anything. Usually, this is a math and science discussion, but if we want to talk geography, most people, I cannot even find a room that can name 22 countries. So we cannot be behind 22 countries in math and science education, and we are. And it is of critical importance that we not only want to go out and change the world, but we've got to educate our kids to have the skills to do that. You can't go out and be an engineer if you don't understand math and science and technology. So this is the world we live in. Right? So we talk about changing. I wondered how long it would take to figure that out. So and how many of you have young children in your lives in some form or fashion? You will understand this picture, right? So just in case everybody gets a potty, and the kid's sitting on the potty, and instead of reading a book, it's got an iPad. So this is the world that we live in today, right? These are the kids that we're raising. My kids at really young ages knew how to, I will never forget the first time that my going like this to it. And I looked at her and I said, what is she doing? Well, what I realized is she was more familiar with the iPad than she was with the magazine, and she couldn't figure out why the pictures were not changing on the magazine, and she was trying to swipe the ads. So, and she was 3. It's a true story when that happened. So this is the world that we're bringing our kids into, whether we like it or not. And we all, for those of you who have children in your lives, we all spend a lot of time trying to figure out how much technology should they be exposed to? When should they play with it? Should they be on the web? Should they not? And a pediatrician recently said to me, well, you can make all the rules you want and try and keep it away from your kids as much as you want, but this is the world your kids are growing up in. And this is helping them understand how to deal with those changes and that kind of technology. It's very important from an early age, and so that's a whole other subject. But when we are growing up with a set of kids who are growing up in a world like this, and we're teaching them in the same classrooms the way we did 100 years ago, what do you think is going to happen? This, right? Do these look like kids that have the will and the skill that are going to go out and change the world when their siblings and they are growing up with iPads and they've got access to crazy information and lots of opportunities? So this is where we begin to talk about the will. What we're looking for at the museum is to give them the thrill of the learning experience. So they need to have the will to change the world, they've got to have the skill to do it, and we've got to give them the thrill that, you know what, math and science is fun. This is really cool to be an engineer. It's really cool to go out and solve the world's problems. There are really fun jobs that I could have one day because I like to build things, or I like to take things apart. So this is what we call that awe-inspired moment, and that is what we are about at the museum. We are about trying to connect our community with that awe-inspiring moment. And what you might be awe-inspired by and what you might choose to do with that is different for every single person that walks through the door. We just hope that when you come to the museum, you will be inspired to go out and change the world, to make different choices on a daily basis. So one of the ways we know we can inspire kids is through science museums. Informal science learning has been proven. There's a recent Board of Governors report that came out that said informal science learning experiences have incredible impact on communities. We have just recently announced that the 5 Nobel laureates at the medical school all have chosen to put their Nobel prizes at the museum. It's really, really exciting. The reason that they did that is because they were inspired when they were young at museums like ours. And so we talk so much about wanting to inspire the next generation of Nobel laureates that are going to go and change the world. Well, our local Nobel laureates, and as everybody here probably knows, we have more Nobel prizes at our medical school than any other medical school in the world. And we feel like we should tell the world about that. So they decided that to put their medals on display might be a great way to show kids that people here in our community have been able to go out and change the world. They've had the will, and they've had the skill, and they had to study, and they had to do research, but they were able to win Nobel Prizes, and so to put them on display is really about helping people understand what that awe-inspiring moment led to in a lot of people's lives. And so you can go out and talk to a number of Nobel laureates, and they will tell you very specific instances when they were kids that they walked through science museums and had that moment of, why does the heart beat like that? I don't understand what genetics are. Why do these things happen? Why does the weather change overnight from 80 to 40? So it's really important that we give people that moment. And it's not just kids, it's anybody in this community. And I think that's one of the big things that we've seen at the museum this year, is that this is a museum for everybody. And that's been one of the things that I think has been, everyone keeps asking me what we were most surprised by. I think we always talked about inspiring lifelong learning, and we hoped to do that. But last Monday, we don't do school groups on Mondays. We do them Tuesdays through Fridays now. So by the way, if you want to come, Monday's a good day. Well, if you don't want to have to shove 100 kids out of the way, it's a good day to come. We looked around on Monday, and we had 1,200 people walking through the door by noon, and most of them were all over the age of 50. It was adults, it was seniors groups. They were having a ball, and they were reading things, and they were engaging. And the point is that we all live in this changing world, not just these kids, and we all need to understand the world that we live in. And so it's really exciting to not only inspire our kids, but to inspire the general community. And that's what we do here at the museum. So as I said, our vision is inspiring minds through nature and science. Again, giving them that will and the skill. It's also about hope, right? We've got a lot of kids who are in our community, almost 90% in DISD in particular, are considered at risk. So what does that mean? It means that when they wake up in the morning, they do not have two parents saying to them, you know what, here's your hot breakfast, here's your clothes set out, and you know what, you can be whatever you want when you grow up. These are kids that are happy to get breakfast. A lot of them go to school hungry. They've got a lot of challenges in their lives. Hope is a luxury for them. Hope is not something that they all have the luxury to have. But when they walk through the door at a museum like this, they have an opportunity to dream. They can dream of being whatever whatever they want when they grow up. They can go to space with us. They can be a paleontologist. They can be an engineer. They can go to different parts of Texas. Yeah, that's better. They can dream of whatever it is they want to do. And a lot of people think it's funny that we talk about hope at a museum that's all about science and engineering, but really, isn't this about giving kids visibility into what they could be when they grow up and giving them the opportunity to dream? Because without a dream, what do you have? You definitely don't have that will to go out and change the world. So we're about educating our future leaders. We do that in lots of ways. We do that through field trips to the museum. We do that through outreach programs. We do that, you can see our yellow school bus program here. You can see, obviously, one of our fun electric theater programs. We try to make learning fun for everybody and bring learning to life, and we do that across all of our programs. As I mentioned, we do programming for learners of all ages. So have any of you been to our social science, which is our adult evening? Some of you, yes? So one of the things that we learned, as I was talking about, is that we've had so many adults come through that they've all kind of raised their hand and said, you know, as much as I was joking about the school kids, that really, we are about school kids. But we had so many adults say, you know, I'm bringing my kids, but I really want to play. I really want to play with the robots. I really want to go learn about climate change. But when I'm there with my kids, I feel like I need to provide them the learning opportunity, and so I want to be able to have an opportunity to go learn on my own. So we created something called Social Science, which we do quarterly, which is an adults-only 21 and up evening, which is all about science, and we do speakers and we do programming. The last one we did, was anybody there? We did the silent disco. You ever seen the silent disco? Highly comical. Yes, you wear headphones and you see a disco going on, but you don't hear any music, so it's pretty funny. So we do lots of fun programming for adults as well, and so we do everything from scouting programs to adult learning to field trips, as I talked about. So there's something for everybody at the museum. So how have we done so far? Some of you might have been following some of the media. We've had very, very positive national media, and what this is exciting is it's great for the museum, and we're thrilled. But what's really exciting is this is great for North Texas, and this is great for Texas, because when the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and all of the European architecture magazines come to Texas to cover what we're doing here, they're telling the world that we care about math and science. They're telling the world that we care about our kids, and they're telling the world that we care about education. And all of you work in businesses that we're trying to attract good talent. And we all know that sometimes trying to attract people to Texas from either coast can be a challenge. And this kind of media is good, not only because it said the museum has done something right, but it tells the world that Texas has done something right, and that we continue to invest in learning, that we continue to invest in technology and moving our community forward. And so that's why these kinds of reviews are really exciting. We've also had positive reviews from visitors, and at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. We want people to come through and have a really good experience with us. And so we've had really positive reviews from kids, adults, grandparents, professionals, PhDs, amateurs. Everybody that's come through has found something that they have loved to do there, which has been really exciting. So how did we get here? So everybody here runs a business. So we are in the business of education. We like to say sometimes that nonprofit is a tax status, not a strategy. So we do have to figure out how to create a sustainable business so that we can continue to educate. We provided over $400,000 in scholarships to at-risk kids last year. It's really important to us that we run a sustainable business so that every child that needs access to this museum can have access to this museum, because so many kids don't have access, and so many families and so many school districts don't have the ability. So we like to run a good business so we can make sure that we can give them scholarships and they can all come for free. So one of the things that we did is we worked with Maine to create a strategic plan, and out of that came 6 key areas. One of those was technology. So I thought I would spend a few minutes highlighting that today. So how we use technology in the museum to attract and change the world we hope. So first thing I'd like to say is a lot of our partners are sitting in the room here today, and this is not a comprehensive list of our partners, but the good news about being a nonprofit is we are tax exempt, which means that people can make donations, which is good, because we couldn't have afforded to do all the amazing things we've done from a technology perspective without amazing partners. And so this is just a small list of a lot of the amazing partners, both local and national, that we've worked with to be able to build this museum. We called this the community curator model. We were a small museum that didn't have a lot of curators. We didn't have the ability to necessarily create everything ourselves. So we live in a community with all of your companies, all of the universities that we've got that have amazing intellectual property, right? So what we did is we went out into the community and said, why don't we use this community to help us curate, whether it's to help us with technology or to help us with content. So these are some of the partners. We could have not done all the things that we've done without them. So we use technology to tell stories. So for those of you who've been to the museum, you've seen that our museum mixes real things, we mix technology. People learn learn in all different ways. Some of you like to read, some of you like to look, some of you like to do. Everybody likes to do things in different ways. And so what was really important to us was that we brought all of those learning styles together, all of the different sciences together. So you don't see a math hall, you don't see a biology hall, you don't see a chemistry hall. What you see is 11 galleries that tell stories. And those stories are interwoven with basic sciences, and we've integrated the science throughout. So you see engineering in all 11 halls. You see genetics in lots of halls. You see health and nutrition in lots of halls. You see physics in lots of halls. So what you do is you go through the museum and you learn these stories. And so we use technology to tell those stories. And what technology allows us to do is keep up to date on what's going on in the world as well. So we can use technology in these halls and mix it with real things and with other stories and change it. And that's one of the exciting things that we've been able to do. And these are just a couple of pictures of some of the ways we've used technology in the halls. We also use technology to build a green building. Obviously, we've come a long way in the last decade with our building technology, and for those of you who have been involved in building projects, and I'm sure even if you're building today, there's even more available to you than we even had. It's changing at such a rapid pace. We use technology to make it a living building. One of the things that, for those of you who've been, you might have noticed, we've got kiosks all over the building, and we've got something that's been done by Lucid that is actually a building, it's a living building little kiosk, and you can actually type in, you can find out how much water is in our cistern, you can find out how much energy has been generated by our solar panels today. You can find out how much water we've actually used today. So we use technology to build a green building, and we also are using technology to tell that story. So you can see that as you come through the building. By the numbers, for those of you who are in the hardware business or in software business, this gives you, I'm not going to recite this all, you all can read, but we've got a lot of technology in the building, needless to say. And so the big question always is, well, that's great when you open, but what happens in 3 years? And that's where those partnerships have come into play that are really important. We've created some wonderful partnerships with companies like Dell and Samsung who have committed to us these long-term partnerships so that we'll be able to continue to refresh the technology and continue to make sure that we can stay current and leading edge as we move forward to educate the public. One of the latest advances that we've had, when we opened the building, one of the things that we said is that we were going to develop a mobile strategy, but we needed to know a little bit more about the building before we could do that. And so we just launched last week with Samsung a really exciting project, which is they donated to us 500 Samsung Galaxy tablets, which are really awesome if you haven't used them. And you can come down to the museum and actually, it provides you a real-time map, so it's a GPS located map so you never get lost in the building. It also gives you a Spanish version. So that was one of the other things that we wanted to make sure that we had a bilingual offering in the museum, so the tablets allow us to do that. The other thing that they allow us to do is provide enhancements to the exhibition. So here you see the Life Then and Now Hall, you see the Allosaurus, the traditional dinosaur, if you can call an 80-foot long, 35-foot tall dinosaur traditional. It is the largest one in Texas, by the way, for anybody who likes to be proud to be from Dallas. But one of the things we wanted to do is in that hall, there was a lot of technology mixed in. There's a predator-prey game, but we wanted to sort of take that to the next level. And so what we've done with the Samsung tablets is actually added what we call visitor enhancements. So there are 3 or 4 games that you can actually interact with the entire hall. You take the tablets around and you actually have to collect food and figure out what you can feed to the Allosaurus. There's different games, and we've done this with 3 halls. And this is our phase 1 launch, which we launched, as I said, just last week, and we launched it just for members, and it will be available to the public shortly. So this is part of our mobile strategy, which allows us to continue to bring in current content. So we can load videos, we can update and upload these every single night. So if something happens today that we want to talk about, or there's a new discovery, we can actually put that into the tablet, so if somebody's walking around with one tomorrow, they can get current news. So it's been a really fun addition to the halls. From a technology perspective, we also have a really advanced theater, which has been really fun. What you see here, I don't know if anybody recognizes, anyone know who that is? James Cameron. So this summer, we worked with National Geographic, and many of you might have followed his deep sea explorer adventure where he went to the bottom of the ocean, and they were taking the submarine capsule. I don't know, did anyone come down to the museum to see it? Oh, it's crazy. It's about the size of the podium, just slightly bigger, and he was in it for 11 hours. It's wild. And so he was bringing it through town as they were on their way to Woods Hole Institute, and so we wanted to give our public the opportunity to hear from him. And it was a last-minute thing that Nat Geo decided to do, so we couldn't actually get him in town. Well, technology allows you to do amazing things. We loaded up the theater with people, and he was in his home theater, and we basically did a Q&A with James Cameron for an hour. And you should have seen the kids side, and we had some of his scientists who'd been on his journey with him were actually in the theater also showing pictures and talking about what they were doing. So you can only imagine where we're going to go with these kinds of opportunities. We can connect to science going on all over the world. The other thing about this is that we also can connect out from the museum. So that was about bringing content in. One of the things that we talked about, it's hard sometimes for schools to get to the museum, so we need to get out into the community. We do a tremendous amount of outreach. This is our Science Cast program. We have got basically a portable video conference system that we can take anywhere in the museum. So when scientists come, like the ones that came from the voyage that we just talked about, we actually let them broadcast from the halls out into the school. So we can see thousands and thousands and thousands of kids and tell them really exciting stories with really exciting scientists, and they never have to leave their classrooms. So Texas is one of the most wired classroom states in the country, which the good news about that is all they need is good content. And so we're spending a lot of time doing a lot of science cast work where we can reach out into communities. We've gone as far as Alaska and been to almost all the states at this point we've reached out to with the content in the museum. So whether it's bringing in a speaker or whether it's bringing content that we already have out into the community, it's really, really important. So these are just some of the things that we're doing involving technology and engineering. One of the other exciting things that we're continuing to work on, and this is being done in the Being Human Hall. This is adjacent to the Engineering and Innovation Hall, where for those of you who've been, has anybody played with the robots or built anything? We just added 3D printers to our engineering activity station, and so several hours a week you can come down and learn about 3D printing. Is anybody else excited about 3D printing? They keep going missing in our offices, and I keep explaining to our staff that we bought them for the public, and I keep seeing all sorts of interesting things that have been made sitting on everybody's desk. So when people and printers go missing, we know where they all are. They're all down in the exhibits, workshops, all playing with 3D printers. So as everybody knows, the maker movement is huge, and we're going to be opening a maker exhibit next summer, and the 3D printing is just at the beginning of some of the exciting things that we have going on as well. So this is just a little bit of an idea of how we're using technology to further that mission, to create the will and the skill. So here you can see a little girl who has spent her summer with us, and who knows, right? I mean, maybe this moment was her awe-inspiring moment that she was discovering something, and you can see that look in her eyes, right? You can see that, I'm trying to figure out what I'm looking at here. Look, and maybe she's a future Nobel laureate. And this is just some feedback from some other kids who've come through. So, bless you. We are excited that the Perot Museum has been open here. It is just the beginning of where we're going. We've said for so long, and Beth can probably remember when we first started visiting, that we had this dream of building this facility, but the facility getting open, we like to say was kind of like the day you brought the baby home, right? We weren't done. It was really just the beginning. And so we've had a year under our belt, and we've learned a lot, and we're continuing to learn. We learn every day. When you have 1.5 million people come through the door, they are happy to tell you about all the things you need to learn. So we are continuing to learn every day and to try to make it a better and better experience every day, so that we hope that, who knows, some child that might walk through the door, and when I walked out, there were 2,000 kids there today. One of those kids might cure cancer one day. One of those kids might win a Nobel Prize. One of them might figure out all of our alternative energy solutions. So every single day is a day of hope and excitement. And every single day, I know that those kids that are walking in are going to walk out as our next change makers. So thank you for having me, and I'm happy to take a few questions if we have time.